Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kodak House. My name is Vanessa Bendetti. I'm head of motion picture for Kodak, and I'm also moderating today. But I see a lot of new faces. There's a few of you who've been here lots of times. But if you've never been to the Kodak House, please raise your hand. Oh, amazing. Very cool. And did you guys hear about it through a friend or? Okay. Well, if you're not on our mailing list and you would like to be, make sure you leave your email and name with Jesse or Jake or somebody at the front desk on your way out, and we'll add you to our email blast list. But this is our community space. We host Q&As like this with filmmakers often, and we also have will call services here for film. We also have a film resale business here where we sell recans and short ends at discounted prices. So welcome to the Kodak family, and it's really been special to see the relationships that are building through this space. A lot of people meeting and then creating work together, so we're really happy to offer this kind of educational opportunity and also community building opportunity. We have two very special filmmakers here today with us to talk about the death of Robin Hood. I'm really excited to get to have them both here. Pat has been here before. We had a conversation about Lurker, another film he shot on film recently. But this is Michael's first time at the house, and glad you're here with us for it. So Pat Scola, ASC, and Michael Sarnoski, please come on out. And hopefully you guys don't get too hot. We're working on our air conditioning here. That's one of our growing pains, but we'll see how we do. Hi, you both.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Being here. So how many of you have seen the film? Okay.
Thanks for seeing the film.
Hopefully there's not too many spoilers. It's called The Death of Robin Hood. You might guess what happens. But this is your third movie together. But it's the first movie you've gotten to shoot on film together.
Yeah.
And I remember meeting you for the first time, I think at maybe the Indie Spirit Awards after Pig.
Yeah.
And you talking about wanting to shoot on film.
We had wanted to shoot Pig on film.
Yeah.
We just couldn't afford it. I mean, we couldn't afford it on this one either, but we just
You
made it happen. But yeah, I mean, we had sort of always wanted to shoot on film. Pig was too small. Quiet Place then just...
Oh, we thought we were going to shoot on film. The precedent had been set by that universe. The first and second one were both shot on film. And then
For A Quiet Place,
and we got to London, and they're like, no. And we're like, oh.
Well, first we were like, oh, we can't wait to shoot in New York when they told us we were going to shoot the whole thing in New York. And then they were like, no, actually, we're going to shoot it all in London. And we were like, that's not what you told us. And it's all going to be digital. And so there were a couple disappointments along the way with Quiet Place.
Well, I remember when I saw Pig before I had met either of you in person, and I was thinking that you were analog filmmakers in your just kind of stylistic approach. And it's funny, when we were talking in the back room, you were saying that's kind of the way you've always approached things anyways. But I would love to know the origin story of the two of you in this collaboration, and then also what was the difference that allowed you to convert it on film for this particular movie?
You want to tell the origin story?
Sure. I think I got the script from a friend of a friend or something, and this was Pig. And I think they were selling it around town at that point. They were like John Wick with a pig with Nick Cage. And at that point, I think Nick was kind of coming off doing some like...
I wasn't selling it as that.
No, you were not selling
Someone
it.
was selling it
This
as
is like
that.
everyone who like talked to you about it, like, oh, it's John Wick with a pig. And I'm like, I really don't want to do that at all. And my agent at the time was like, you should really read it. It's not what people are kind of saying it is. And I did read it, and obviously we know what the film is, and it's a film full of heart, and it's about grief, and there's...
Can you guys hear him okay?
So much to
Hold
it.
the
I'll
mic
talk
up,
louder.
Pat.
Yeah, we met at a coffee shop, like cold, randomly. And I think the thing that happened in that meeting that was fun was I started describing how I saw the pig napping sequence, which is when they kidnap Nick's pig. And it's like, I kind of was going through this, like, how we could achieve it in, like, this wonder, and the camera falls down to the ground with him. And he's like, and he, like, pulls out his, like, little hand-drawn storyboards, and it's kind of, like, the same.
They were normal size.
Yeah,
they weren't
they're
that
regular
little,
size.
like.
But it's, like, the same idea. It was the same idea that I was describing, and we were both like, oh, this is cool. I guess this might this might work. And 3 movies later, that's where
Yeah,
we're at.
everyone always assumed that we like went to film school together and had known each other for years, but it was just a kind of magical coffee date, and then just learning to love each other, and it was one of those, like, I feel like we've said this before, that like I think we work so well together because like 95% of the time we're on exactly the same page without even needing to speak. And then 5% of the time we want to murder each other and disagree like so deeply.
Yeah.
But like that's really useful because then it's like, okay, there's something that we really have to figure out here.
Or like new ideas spawn from
yeah.
that. Like perhaps if like such an aggravated disagreement didn't occur, we wouldn't get to the kind of end point of the ideas that come out of it.
Not to jump ahead, but what was the aggravated point of contention on this movie? Do you remember?
Someone asked us that recently. What did
There
we?
was none. It was perfect. It never happens.
No, there must. Oh, you're being sweet. What?
There was nothing like major. There's
We're getting
always
better at that.
There's always one point in the movie where Michael wants light in a random
I
place
get
that doesn't make
one,
sense to me.
I get one
And
light
then
change
I'm just like,
per
why
movie.
are you breaking my balls about lighting the bottom right 8 pixels of this fucking frame?
But we've come to an agreement that it's sort of like, okay, this is your one.
He
for this
gets
movie.
he
Yeah.
always gets he gets at least one.
Sometimes even 2.
Very
Yeah, no,
generous.
it
Very generous.
It can be
And
2.
and what was the catalyst to be able to shoot this particular movie on film, and what allowed you to kind of decide to prioritize that in a way that you had not been able to on the other movies?
I'm trying to remember like where that. Do you remember where that started with this one?
I mean, I think I think there was like, we knew. I don't know. I don't even think there was like a real discussion around it. It was kind of just like, yeah, we're doing this on film. Yeah. I don't know. That's kind of how it felt when we
I
first
think it was
talked
like,
about it.
It seemed obvious, and then like the producer, like Aaron, was like, "We're doing this on film, right?" And then it becomes, everyone's
that's how
like,
it
"Yeah."
starts, right?
It's always like, "Yeah, we're gonna do it on film, easy," and then like it's always the first thing that goes once people are like, "Oh, this costs money," and then it's like, and then everyone's just like, "Oh no, we gotta cut every corner," and film's always like the first thing to go, which is so dumb. And so it really becomes about just like sticking to your guns on it, figuring out ways to do it.
You must prioritize it like it's an actor. You're like, oh, we have to protect this money for this. So where else can we lose money from in order to accommodate this thing that we are very adamant about? And if you don't dig in on that, it becomes very easy for them to get rid of it.
And I think early on we knew with this one, we had just always wanted to shoot on film. But with this one, it seemed obvious. It seemed like, okay, the idea behind making this movie was we've made a tiny indie movie with Pig. We've done a big studio movie with Quiet Place. Now we're doing something that like is in between those, and we're going to create it as an independent film and maintain that kind of sense of like a family making a movie and do something that we really believe in. And with that, it was like, yeah, of course, then this is going to be the one that we shoot on film. And then also like this movie, it's a kind of exploration of storytelling and legends and folklore, and it made sense that it should have this kind of classic feeling that feels a little timeless. And it was just like, this needs to, we wanted this to feel like something that like could have been made any time, and it's a little unclear, and like and so it just made sense that like it should just feel that way.
There's such an amount of I want to say like it's in our world, but like like we were talking about Game of Thrones earlier, and things that are kind of shot in this universe or could feel confused with our universe, and a lot of those things are done on digital. And I think wanting it to feel like something that was, I don't know, not those things was important to us. So it just didn't feel like, I don't know, whatever you want to call that feeling.
I love that. We have live corrections going on, by the way.
It's very impressive.
Well done.
And I would love to know, Michael, I mean, I think this is a really interesting approach, obviously, to a iconic classic character. And it's a brutal, very provocative, gritty look at this character. And I don't know, but it feels partially because of the epic way that you guys shot this and the fact that it is, there's so much depth of character, and it feels like it's probably the most historically accurate representation of Robin Hood. I don't know that that's true. It just, this movie feels distinctly grounded in a way that other renditions of the story, compared to other renditions of the story. So I'd love to know what drew you to the subject matter, and I used to do a lot of research for films. So I'm always fascinated about the research process. So I'd love to know a little bit about how you created this world.
Yeah, I mean, I always try not to make any claim of like this is the most historically accurate Robin. Like, it might be. It wasn't the primary focus. It certainly was. I wanted, I had read The Death of Robin Hood legend as a kid, and it is an old ballad where he goes to this priory, and a prioress, spoilers, she bloodlets him to death. Like, that is one of the first legends of Robin Hood. And it had always seemed a little thin. It was like she was this evil nun, and he was the goodly hero. And I wanted to like explore. I was shocked by the intimacy and quiet of that idea of someone just slowly killing someone in this like church bedchamber. And so it became like, okay, I want to understand these characters and understand the relationship between them and how this could happen with them. So I think the historical accuracy side came from, okay, I want to understand what it might have felt like to be a prioress in the 13th century and to be an outlaw in the 13th century, and what would their world have looked like. There were certain things, like there was a lot of violence back then. We dialed that up a little bit because this is an exploration of someone whose life was defined by violence. So like, it's not a perfect representation of that time, but it's trying to achieve. I was really inspired by this movie, The Virgin Spring by Bergman, which I made Pat watch, and
real
he was like,
uplifting.
It's like,
Friday
God,
night
man,
movie.
why did you do that? But like, I think I've said this before, but I think the thing that strikes me about that movie is it feels, in my mind, like what it might have felt like to be a living soul in that time in history. And I think that's what we were trying to achieve, is like, what might it have felt like to be a human soul living in these times when death and deep spirituality were both like right around the corner. So that was something we were kind of trying to capture. And, sometimes we strayed from historical accuracy, but a lot of times we leaned into that to achieve that sense of place and presence and that visceral texture and this feeling of like constantly being surrounded by myth and storytelling and religion. It was a long research process, but it was also just kind of about trying to capture that feeling.
But this is a story that you had been kind of developing for a long, long time. It sounds like, if you read that as a child.
There was so the sort of personal side of it was, which I don't think I ever even told you this when we were first working on this, but Robin Hood had been like the character that my dad and I loved. Robin Hood and Spider-Man were like our two characters growing up. And my dad passed away when I was 9, and I had this neighbor who gave me his childhood Robin Hood book when I was 9 as sort of this like, hey, buddy, like your dad died, but like you can still continue loving the things that you guys love together. And that was the first time I read sort of the full adventures of Robin, ending with the death of Robin Hood. Yeah. And so there was this like striking thing of like, in this moment when I was kind of realizing that like these iconic male figures in your life that you think of as immortal can die, I then read this story of Robin Hood, and you're like, wait a minute, he's a folkloric hero, like he doesn't die, like he just rides a unicorn into the sunset or something, and like no, he dies this like very human, quiet death. And so that just like stuck with me as a kid and became something that I would always kind of come back to. And I think it was one of those, like, I loved Robin. It's sort of a silly idea to make a Robin Hood movie, but if I ever was going to do that, I think I knew that I wanted to explore that story and understand, like, how do you get from the intensity of the action hero Robin whatever and end with this like extremely quiet, sensitive human moment at the end. And so it was really about like turning both of those things up, like being like, okay, let's drive the violence into the most like sort of aggressive form that we can find to really understand where he's coming from, and then let's get to the most meditative, sort of transcendent place that we can by the end. And that's sort of where that came from.
I was telling Pat when I started to watch it yesterday, I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be a ride. And then the arc of the story is really incredible, and you do pack it all in the beginning, and then you get to have kind of a context for it later.
Yeah,
which I loved, actually. I think it was
that's
really
good.
smart.
It's meant to be like unpleasant at first. Like the violence is, if you go to this being like, I want to see an exciting Robin Hood movie, it's like you'll get that, but like you'll feel a little dirty by the time you're out of it, because you're like, oh my god, this is really, oh gosh, these are really people just like hurting each other. And then I wanted the latter portion to feel like healing and quiet. And
well, and that pays off hugely. I mean, I think the depth of emotion that comes from that and the context of it all is effective. So,
yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you guys defined your visual style for this movie? I mean, you mentioned one of your references, but how you decided, kind of your approach to this and the tonality of the film. And there's very distinct color schemes and kind of references in that way. So I'd love to know a little bit more about how you approached it together.
I just said, Pat, what should it look like?
No, I mean, well, I've been the first thing that he like kind of inadvertently shared with anybody who read the script is on the cover page of the script. There's a painting by N.C. Wyeth called "The Passing of Robin Hood." It's painted like the early 1900s. It's not like a very old painting, but it for me like that I had never seen that before, so I naturally was like curious about that particular painting. And then as you see the last scene, you read the script, and that last scene feels so close to what you're kind of seeing in that painting. And that kind of, I don't know, I mean, that definitely led down a road of I mean, I feel like the film has quite a painterly quality that I'm proud of. And I think there are artists like Vermeer that were a big part of it. Like if you look at some of his paintings, he's like exceptional at creating, and more so in the Priory than anything, but like he's very good at creating depth through light versus like composition. So he has these like the Milkmaid or a woman reads a letter. If you look at these paintings he's made, there are these amazing compositions that are flat people, 2D paintings, like they're standing against a wall, but it has so much light and depth. And that was like super, I don't know, that was very informative because we spend so much time of, the big challenge that had to be cracked is like, how do we keep this bedchamber that we spend upwards of like half of the film interesting? How do we feel like each time we shoot it, it's something new, and how is it reflective of Robin's kind of life or where he is in this moment? And that ties to a lot of things. Like, you were very big on like when Robin first arrives there, you kind of feel the light change throughout the film as he sort of his experience changes or as he grows along this journey. Like when we get there, it's quite gray and cold as winter's ending, and as he kind of comes out of his shell, begins to trust the prioress a bit more, we start to feel the warmth of spring, and towards the end we sort of end in this place that is interesting because it's like, even though it's his death, what? You're not mourning. It feels like we didn't want it to feel like cold or obvious or like we're mourning him. It's sort of something that is, I don't know, like we're moving on and we're okay to move on.
In between, and we'll get into that with the film stock later with that. But like it was about finding that. Yeah, I mean there were a lot of progressions, and that was in aspect ratio, that was in the colors that we introduced. We can talk about a lot of that sort of in detail.
The first 30 minutes is so cold and bleak and gray, and then like you don't really feel color aside from fire up until you get to the Priory, and so there's a lot of kind of transitional things that we're constantly playing with. And there was endless meetings about it, I promise.
Yeah. And we also he was talking about how we have to return to this bedchamber and shoot it in different ways. We only built 2 sets on a stage. We built this bedchamber, and then there's a piece of a cave that we built, and then everything else was on location. And really only one built thing on location, and everything else was like finding these amazing old places and these natural environments. And our process is when we start prep, we shot list the whole movie from beginning to end. Like we go through it, crack a bottle of wine, and just shot list the whole movie. And weirdly, this was probably our longest shot listing process. And I think it was because Pig and Quiet Place both have a little bit of a linear A to B structure, and this is the first one that's kind of a little more cyclical, and you keep returning to these same places with new context. And I think that just took a lot of discussion and time thinking like, okay, how are we going to come back to this same bedchamber with one window and express what we need to be feeling in this scene, and how are we going to shoot this scene? And it was great. Like it was great to spend time thinking about that, but it was like a very different shot listing process than we've had before.
You're saying that was a build?
Yeah, that was a build with like a soft drop outside, not a translate. I always say a translate, and Pat says, "Sorry." But yeah, that was a build. We'll get into that with the final scene because it was like
the Priory is like 5 different locations.
I mean, the interior is like 5, and then the exterior is another like.
It's sort of like this. We meticulously kind of figured out a way to tie all of these. We had no money to do anything.
Yeah.
So
we shot this in 30 days for under $20 million. So it was like not I mean, that
sounds like no money. It sounds like a lot of money, but it's not.
But for something of this scale,
for those of you who haven't seen it, it is incredibly epic, and the scale is really impressive. It does not look like, it looks like a big studio movie. I mean, it doesn't look like a $20 million indie.
But like part of that is finding these places in Ireland. And
we shot the whole thing in Northern Ireland. I don't know. I'm just
sans one day in the south.
In 30 days, and you guys were shipping to where for your processing?
It was Cinelab.
Cinelab
in London.
And so you were seeing dailies how quickly usually?
Day and a half. It was a pretty quick process, but we couldn't fly them. We had to put a courier on a boat every day.
Were they going into like Manchester? Where did they boat to?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
And did you have a PA that was crossing?
Janine said it had to be a boat. I'm like, we really can't fly? And she's like, no, it's got to be a boat. I was like, okay.
A rowboat. It was weird. Can we have a motor? And they were like, no.
Hugh was going across with a. Yeah. And did that impact you at all? I mean, do you, like from a pacing perspective or the way that you, I mean, I don't know how you normally, how much you watch your dailies or not.
We didn't have playback on
Some
set.
of us watch the dailies a lot.
To save 70K. I would just get too nervous if I watched dailies. I don't watch dailies. We didn't have playback on set.
I would text him and be like, hey, did you see the dailies? He's like, no.
No.
I'm like, what?
It is what it is, man. It's like, what are we going to do? We don't have time to fix it.
He's right.
And how to tell you if there's a real problem, right?
You just got to keep pushing forward. But no, like we only had playback for like 3 days when we were shooting the farm action scenes.
And that's something we gave up to get film.
Pay for film. So like we really, but like we didn't have playback on Pig either. And like, I don't mind that. We don't watch playback a lot. It's usually just the actors who are like, "Can I see my performance?"
It's funny though when you don't have it, you like, or when you don't use it. Like I kind of tell a lot of, especially newer directors, this now that when I work with them, I'm like, and I'll like I'm like, Michael and I don't use playback. They're like, what? And I'm like, nope. And it's like, but it's funny when you have it and when you don't use it a lot, and then you have it, you realize how little you actually do use it, and you start to look at how much it costs, and you're like, well. I'm not trying to take a job from anybody, but if there are things that you're having trouble affording, you can really decide if that money is better spent somewhere else. And little fun fact for any directors here, it is in the DGA contract. The director by DGA contract can decide if they want playback. So any producer that tries to
I did not know that.
Push it onto you, it's actually in your contract to decide if you want it or not.
Yeah, very cool. Do you guys want to start looking at some scenes?
Yeah.
Jim Getty cooked.
Yeah.
So this is obviously a very visually dense scene and a pivotal part of the movie, and a lot of impressionistic lensing. And so I'm just curious how much of this had been planned and how much of that kind of came together in the edit or during production as you were going. And then I'd love to have you share a little bit about some of the techniques used in this sequence, because I think you did some really fun stuff that was unique. And
I would say this is very planned. I would say, like, if you were to put our shot list on the screen, you would see pretty much every shot described almost pretty spot on.
We don't storyboard a lot, but I actually think we storyboarded most of this, because the things that are really specific that we just know other departments need to know, we sometimes storyboard and then they never look at them.
It's true.
And so this one was pretty spot on and specific to what I mean, there was some stuff where it was like, okay, we know we're going to do some weird Ember stuff or whatever, but like, yeah, it was pretty planned out.
The goal of it, I mean, you can see it's like we wanted just, and so much of the movie is his subjective experience, but like this particularly being, I think we've seen films before that, when someone is sort of in and out of consciousness or this feel like that idea is not new, but we wanted to find a way to kind of maybe bring a certain level of like, I don't know, something that felt a little more poetic to it, a little bit more, I don't know, a little less just relying on the same techniques that we've always used. I mean, I think we advanced on them a little bit. Like, a lot of the soft focus or things that you see are not, half of that sequence or a good portion of that sequence is shot on a lens baby. Just like it was a $700 plastic lens. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like Dan Suzaki, I had tested, he had made a, one of the first things. Do you remember when I was like, oh, I want to shoot through water? And that was like when I read this sequence, I'm like, what if we shot so much of it through water? Like, what if we're using water to obscure and come in and out of consciousness rather than just like relying on focus or something like that. And so Dan had made a lens with a silicone front element, a liquid silicone front element that we had looked at. I don't think it ended up not being the right thing, but either way, like this is the world we were exploring, and so much of it is we bought maybe like 10 different mason jars and cylinders off Amazon, and just filled them with water and tried different things. And a lot of what you're seeing is either that $700 plastic lens from Lens Baby, no shade, they look great on 35, honestly. Or me puppeteering a mason jar full of water.
Like just dancing in front of the camera with like a mason jar going like this, and like it was amazing.
We want the BTS.
Like that shot of Bill when he's leaning into Robin at the fire, and he sort of like disappears and melts away. Like that's like just twisting a mason jar of water for like $10.
There's a shot where you can pretty clearly see the edge of the mason jar just come
like,
in, but
it's
just like whatever.
It doesn't matter.
Like it doesn't matter. Yeah, the mason jar worked great. That was
those
fun.
like the sparks, the ashes that kind of like turn into these like streaky bits. It was like that. What else? I mean, the aspect ratio.
Yeah,
that was a big thing. Yeah, you want to talk about it was.
This is where the movie transitions from 239 to 166, and then stays 166 for the rest of the movie, which I'm sure most theaters screwed up. I went to see a screening, and they just played the whole thing in scope, and like it was cut off the whole time, which is so annoying. It was a weird thing. We had to release this movie in a flat container, so it's 16:9 basically. But then it sort of starts scope letterboxed and then closes into 166 because we didn't want it to feel like it was getting smaller as the transition happened. And that was a decision we made like really early on.
This is one of those fights though, the 5%. This was a 5% fight.
Did we fight about it?
We did. We were in the LA Athletic Club drinking martinis. And I was like, aspect ratio changes are fucking for losers.
Yeah. But then we were like, well, what if we could? The cool thing is, I think you can see it more on a TV. People rarely ever notice that there's an aspect ratio change, even though it's pretty drastic, because it happens over like 4 minutes, and it's just hidden in this kind of like weird montage.
But that's how we kind of came to this 4-minute long version of it, is because we and him were like, aspect ratio change, but we don't want it to like cut just randomly, and all of a sudden you're in a different format. And I'm kidding, they're fun, but I think it's quite cool. I don't know if I've seen it done quite like that, so invisibly. I don't know.
Well, and it does a really nice job of differentiating these two worlds that you have, and the kind of the beginning and the anamorphic scope of all of that, and then coming into a more intimate, emotional part of the movie. So I kind of agree with Michael, I have to say.
No, I mean,
he came around to it.
No, by the end, I agreed completely with the idea that 239 would be wrong for the second part of the film. It was just more about how we get there. And like
he just says all my ideas are dumb at first. He just hates my ideas.
Never happens.
But like, because he actually came up with, it's a simple thing, but like he did this test where he like cut together a bunch of different clips and made this kind of montage and tested out like a way to do the transition to bury it even more, where he's basically like, okay, if we open up vertically for a while and then halfway through is when we start closing it, it was like, oh dang, that really does make it invisible, and it makes it feel like you're constantly growing in a weird way.
Yeah, it's not just a straight open. It's like you had the horizontal, the vertical had to occur first, because if you started doing the horizontal at once, you just felt like sort of like the edges all coming out. It just felt wonky.
Yeah, and that was, I think we showed that to like the producers, and that clip the montage you put together was, I think, when everyone else was kind of like, oh dang, I think this might actually
because there was concern about us doing it, especially because from a deliverable standpoint, like what he said, somebody messed it up at a theater by putting the matting down, but like the way the container we ended up delivering in should be easy enough to mat for, but I don't.
Projectionists always think they're smarter than what the notes say. Yeah. So they're like, it's not flat, it's scope, clearly. We're going to do the whole thing in scope.
Well, I noticed it actually after it had already happened, and so I didn't see the transition, which I think you did very effectively.
That's kind of, we just wanted to feel different when you get, like the first shot when you get to the Priory and it's like looking at the window and the prioress is talking to him, we just wanted to suddenly sort of feel like you had this. Yeah. And
I think the shot you feel it really on is because that's the wide when you hit the wide of the room and he's in the bed and she's walking in the room. It's like then you're like, whoa, I'm feeling much taller.
And it's like you said, like the beginning is sort of like, okay, here's the epic Robin you think you're coming to see, and then we go to the Priory and it becomes this sort of chamber drama and these portraits and this intimacy, and then when it is wide, it's very like heavenly and like ascendant. What is it? It's an ascension.
No, don't. No, you're in the wrong.
No. It's but it suddenly like opens up the verticality in a way where it's like when you go into these spaces, it's like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I can breathe again.
Another reason we wanted to photograph, like the 166 came about because we were toying with different ideas for aspect ratios. We were like 166 did come about because so much of that, the second part of the film is everything is like you have so many people just sort of masking who they are, not telling the truth, and you're so much of it exists in their performances. And I think that was important to us, is to make sure like we know that like half this movie is going to live in close-ups because it has to. Like it's like even if you shot some of the, I think we shot mediums and stuff that ended up don't making it into the movie because you're not like accessing the sort of subtleties of the performances that Jodie and Hugh that are so great. But like you want an aspect ratio that can like allow you to lens the face like quite close. And like I think we don't normally lens close-ups like this in his films. Like this is the longest, that part of the film is the longest we've ever done. Like, and it's not that long. They're only like all the close-ups are mostly 50. But that's not our normal language. We normally we're typically a much wider and closer language. So
I love the shot when the light comes up and he's laying on the table and you start to see him in a different way than you've gotten to see him yet in the film. I love that. I love that close up a lot.
But yeah, so.
And then, do you want to talk about sort of the 3-perf nature of the transition?
Oh yeah, that's just a technical challenge, because we're going to keep crying poor with our $20 million budget, but we couldn't carry multiple. Like we basically had 2 bodies, and we had a third body. We had 2 ARRICAM LTs and a 235, but we couldn't really afford to carry different movement. We couldn't have different movements, so. He wanted it to be he was looking for like grit, and that was something of a really early conversation. So, if I'm honest, I think had we not needed the 166, I would have opted for 2-perf. Like I would have been like pitching 2-perf hard, but we needed to go to 166, so we kind of needed the height of 3-perf. But we knew we wanted the scope for the beginning, so we needed an anamorphic solution that would work in 3-perf. Panavision, our friend Mike Carter's here, Panavision's Ultra Panatar 2s, which Mike, you just tell me if I'm making shit up, please. I think like they're like large format anamorphic for digital. Yes, still good. But if you use them on a 3-perf gate, you can de-squeeze them to. It's not a true 239. You actually get a little bit more, but to get to 239, it's right there. It's super close. So I think we were the first movie to do it. On 3-perf? On film. Yeah, on film. Boom. So it was an interesting puzzle to put that together of like, okay, we shot, the whole first third of the movies on the UP2s, and then when we transition, that whole sequence we just watched had to be shot spherically, obviously, because we need to be able to move the matte and give him flexibility in the edit so that the matte can move and he can cut it how he wants. And then the last 2/3 of the film is all primos. Spherical primos, which are like so beautiful on 3-perf and simple,
So you were just looking for more of the grain, and that was what drove the 3-perf conversation.
We even experimented with Super 16 early on.
I mean, we tested it against. We did a bunch of tests with this and 16, and we did 1.3 squeeze on Super 16 as well. But I think ultimately these lenses too do have the beginnings, the UP2s have an unbelievable, like, swirly, painterly feeling to their out of focus renderings. It's like we projected them all at the theater at Panavision in Woodland Hills, and it was, I think there was like no question. Like we kind of like saw it and you're like, that's it. Yeah. That's the movie. Which is a nice feeling because it wasn't like a lot of debate. It was just sort of like a natural feeling of like, oh, that feels like the right one.
How many weeks of prep did you have together?
10. But we also started beforehand. We were meeting.
Yeah, we were drinking at the athletic club.
Way before that.
For work.
For work.
For work.
For work.
I love it. We can watch another scene. Do you want to do you remember the next one?
This is the sort of dual funeral scene. So this actually takes place before the thing we just watched. This is in the early anamorphic phase. And this is after the first battle at Little John's farm. everyone's sort of tending to their dead and getting ready for the next battle, which is the one where Robin is finally injured. Yeah, so you sort of you see Little John tending to his dead wife, and this other sort of family tending to this boy that was killed earlier in this earlier battle.
So because we're seeing these scenes out of sequence, you don't get the impact, but within the sequence of the movie, this is the first scene where there's some warmth. So we've been outside in the very cold, bleak, cool tones of Northern Ireland, and then this is kind of the first time that there's warmth, although it's surrounded by this kind of rage and the ramifications of all of the brutality that occurs in the movie just before that. But I'd love for you guys to talk about kind of the way that you've incorporated fire here and all the duality of the religion and the brutality of what's happened to both of these families. And it also is the first time we see Robin Hood with kind of emotional impact of what he does. So I'd love to talk about that. And also, Pat, you're operating here, so.
Should we call it Pat mode? Should we say that that's
I don't think
Pat mode, trademarked, is something that we discovered on Pig, which is when something needs to be sensitive and delicate and is just too much to shot list. We're just like, Pat, take the camera, and then he just roams around. It's a little more complicated than that, but it's worked out for us so far.
Yeah, but there's a real beauty and delicacy to the way that you're treating everything in that space. I mean, I love it.
We've used it on every film. We pick certain scenes always to use this kind of technique of capturing. It's more
Pat mode?
Yeah, it's more like capturing in a lot of ways, because Michael basically gives the actors in the space like room to just inhabit this moment, and they just do it. And in this particular case, what you're watching, the music you hear in the movie is actually playing in the room, which maybe also is an interesting thing that maybe ties the visuals even tighter to what ended up being edited. But yeah, like they just basically live this moment, and I kind of do it with them. And it's like something that I think I do in not just your films, but a lot of them, I think.
What?
Yeah. But like
discovered it with you, though.
To me, like holding the camera and being with the actors is something that like I have a hard time giving up or like letting an operator do. It's something that I've always really wanted to hang on to. And I think that you get the results that you feel from it are just because there is very little control over it. You're just sort of reacting to something happening. And you're just the camera's just another performer in the scene in a way. So you're kind of like, I'm watching Bill, and I'm not thinking it's Bill. I think it's really Little John, and he's mourning his dead wife. And like I feel those things, and then the camera kind of reflects, I think, what I'm feeling too. I don't know, it works in particularly, I think. We always use it in like emotional scenes or things that are trying to carry more weight.
Emotional scenes that involve some sort of simple but tactile process. Like in Pig, we did it for all the cooking scenes. Like and it also often when we're doing it, we're shooting in 48. Like when we were doing the cooking in Pig, that was often shot in 48. And it's like, okay, you just want to sort of be in, and it's like, we have we kind of did a similar thing where like on Pig, we had a chef who was like sort of coaching Nick through some of the moves. And we do it later in this movie as well when Robin's like building an arrow, and we had our weapons master kind of like coaching him through this, and we're just kind of like finding these moments together. And these sort of moments that are like sort of just a simple present process. That was a hard thing to say. We just kind of lean on that, and we like when there's that family mourning the child. Yeah, we were playing this song. The composer, this was his first time ever doing a score. He's a Sheffield-based musician who's just this incredible folk musician named Jim Geddy. And so this was a song that we had listened to on Scouts
over and over again. You would walk by anybody's office, and it would just be
good.
Playing out of the rooms in the office.
And we tempt this into the movie, just being like, okay, we love, like, he's gonna compose it, but like he'll probably do a new thing. And then it was like, no, let's just stick with this song that like was the anthem.
It's incredible.
Yeah, but it was amazing to just sort of like be in this space lit by firelight and surrounded by people mourning and playing this kind of mournful, dark song and just kind of quietly exploring it together, and Pat just kind of weaving in and then we have these moments where like I really liked how you like came in on Noah Jupe there. Like let's see if we can sort of like replicate that on the next take. And
it's fun. It's a fun level of discovery for both of us too.
Yeah.
Like because like we have an idea of like what's required of the scene. Like we do talk about it. And we're like, okay, this is like what we need to mine out of this emotionally. But like we don't necessarily know, especially like with the funeral scene that's not Bill's, right? With like there's all these sort of, you know, these are all more or less, I'm not being rude, but like these are extra, they're day players, you know, you don't know what you're gonna get from them, and so many of them were like brought it. You're like, holy shit.
Wow.
These people
Well,
are
and
like,
playing the music in the scene and having just that environment already. These were both practical locations, or
the
sort of.
the
There's a sort of.
the so the one with the large group of people was practical. That was at was that at no, that was at Myra. That was at Myra.
Yeah.
That was where we shot some other exterior courtyard stuff for the Priory. And they had this old castle.
But
in Northern
it's
Ireland.
not fully. So we
I mean,
put
we
we put a plug in. We built the fireplace.
Yeah, we did. We futzed with
some
it a bit,
stuff.
and then Little John's hut is actually that was fully built with like salvaged wood in this field, and so that whole. But it was also like, I think we had a breakaway wall in like part of it that we never used.
No.
But it was pretty much they were shot essentially as practical locations, and they existed sort of in.
Even when we
Yeah.
shoot sets in general, our approach is kind of treating it. We rarely pull walls out.
I was just going to say, it doesn't feel like there's any
we try.
expanse to.
We did it once in this film. There's one time, and there's a really good reason for it, and we can touch on it later because I think you're going to show that clip. But like, yeah, for the most part, we try to treat locations like our built locations like they're real locations, like and let the limitations kind of force you into things that you maybe like. If you can do everything, it's like. I don't know. I feel like you feel that somehow.
You do.
You'll subconsciously
agree.
feel that in the film and kind of want it. If you want that place to feel real, I don't know. I'd rather like be limited by the space and you know not mess with it.
Pat Scola, how do you approach lighting those scenes when you know you're going to be roaming around in that way?
That's all. To be clear, we weren't really super precious about this, but that's all firelight mostly. Bill's is all firelight. That's all just the fireplace on.
And was that 500T?
That's 500, and it's the only roll that's pushed in the whole movie.
But a great example when people tell you can't shoot low light on film. It's
that's just fear.
Yeah.
I mean, the meter says error everywhere, but that's who needs that thing.
well, and the way
That's
fire
fake.
reads, the way the
Fugazi.
reds read. I mean, it's just
Yeah, I
so
mean that
pretty.
was all 500 push one, and it's not even. I mean, it's a thin negative, but it's punchy. It's there, and it's like. And Tom Poole, who did our last movie in this, and Tom really
Company 3.
Yeah, he killed it too. So he really has a way of bringing out even those very thin negatives. He's very good at bringing the perfect amount out of it. But and then in the other house, it's mostly firelight, but it's like we had to supplement in some places because there's so many people, there's so many shadows occurring. But everything in this movie, like fire, I think there's some people who are very like precious about like I'm going to only use real fire, and I think that's a really like you get great results, you can see it, but like for us, I think. Well, at least when I'm doing, your movies, performance is something we really value, and we don't really want to step on actors or make them not be able to do things. And fire comes with certain limitations, and you start to not be able to maybe do things the way you want. So every scene in this movie, we use like 4 or 5 different methods of fire throughout the movie. I mean, one of the big battles is literally just lit with a burning house. That happens, and that's just the burning house. But then when we're inside in bed chambers, I mean, there's stuff where we're actually doing like Texas switches with real torches where Hugh's holding a real torch, but then he goes into a cave where all our safety people are like, you can't bring a torch in there. He'll light his fake beard on fire. And we're like, oh, no, he's fine. And so like we can't
it wasn't even his beard. They were like, oh, actually this set is highly flammable. And
Oh,
we
that
were
was
like,
it. Yeah,
oh.
they used the
and they were
wrong,
like,
they
we
used some
built
kind of
this,
foam.
Yeah, they used like
Yeah,
the wrong,
right.
and they're like, we built this 1 3-foot stretch that isn't flammable. So it's like, okay, he can have a real torch here, and then he turns, and we passed off and kept the same shot going, and he switches to an LED torch and blocks
and then,
it with
and
his
then passed
body.
back a
And
fire
then-
torch.
Yeah,
at the
it
end.
was fun.
So like we do stuff like that, which is maybe like slightly overcomplicating it to a point, but again, it's always like based on like we want to get the most out of what the actors can do. Like in his bedchamber, we rarely lit with real fire. That's a special rig that our gaffer Seamus built called the Dalek, which is it's like a 4x4 piece of plywood with I don't know like 50 500 watt like clear bulbs in it, or 25 500 watt clear bulbs. I mean, it's a massive amount of light. You don't need it all, but it allows you to run it it's all clear bulbs, so it's all, quartz filaments, so you can run them at like 10-20%, and you get that extremely like warm glow. But then you can run.
I was going to say you can choose which.
Well, yeah, you can run. We actually had that hooked that to a video desk, and we were running actual video through those bulbs. You're not really running video through it, but it's mimicking the input signals from the video. So you're getting these very abnormal flickers that don't feel so mechanical. Which I think if you start to program LEDs and stuff, you kind of get a really
Is that something that has been used in the past that you know of, or is
yeah,
that
no, I think people do that a lot. Like we're running video through everything to make things feel. I've done that with like Northern Lights imitations before.
So it feels random and feels more.
Yeah, but it does feel more random than a board operator.
You told me you invented it for this movie. I don't. Wow.
But like with a board operator just programming, it can often feel like a pattern, and like with that, you get way more randomness.
What time of year were you guys shooting?
February, March. I mean, it was winter in Northern Ireland.
We were getting absolutely hammered.
Yeah, we actually, the week before we started shooting, they had a record, like, I think it was like the strongest windstorm in like recorded history.
I think it was like 60 years or something.
Yeah.
It wasn't history, but it was like 60
and it
years.
like blew out half of our locations, and we had to flip our entire schedule and spend a month like carving out roads through fallen trees just so we could access these like remote mountains and stuff. And
I mean, we built roads. Like they built roads. So not we. We did nothing.
I built all the roads.
But they built roads to some of these. I mean, like the movie looks so wild and beautiful because it was, and it was hard. It was like. It was arduous.
You
for
can really
people.
feel it, and I had read somewhere that one of your references was The Revenant, and there's remnants of that for sure here. Just that arduous shoot that you kind of reads into the.
Hugh has said that the fight scene where he's fighting in the mud and getting his face buried in the mud was the hardest day of shooting he's ever had on any movie, and he wasn't and it's very sweet because like his version of having a terrible day is just being like, hey guys,
Super
can
nice.
I just like have a minute? I just like can't move my head right now. I tweaked my neck and he's like so gentle and sweet about everything, but like it was brutal. I mean, it started pouring rain this day. We were shooting this big mud fight, and the whole field just like flooded, and it was just like a foot deep of mud, and it was
every day felt like this. So we were getting hailed on, we were getting rained on, we were always covered in mud or sheep shit.
Yeah. It's a lot of sheep shit.
A lot of sheep shit.
Yeah.
So we'll see the last scene here. Do you want to set it up a little bit again?
And I'm not entirely sure which part of the scene we're seeing, so we'll just see what happens. But this is the one that's shot in Verita as well.
Yes, so I was just going to say, these two filmmakers were the first to use our new Verita 200D stock on a feature film. And Pat had some experience with it beforehand. He did some of our early customer testing while it was still in development and shot some really beautiful stuff with it. A Maggie Rogers video that is so good looking. You have to look it up if you haven't seen it.
It's really just the stock.
Yeah, no, it's really pretty. So we were really excited to have this employed on a feature film for the first time, and you guys saved the stock for this last scene. So it's the only time that they used it in the movie, and it really, I think, does an incredible job of differentiating the scene. Just to give some background on it before you see it, but
yeah, I mean, it was when we were talking about that death scene being like feeling like moving on and not necessarily grief, and I think the stock lends itself to a sort, and you'll see it too, like the way that the highlights sort of roll off outside the window, like the peachiness of the skin tones of Bridget and Margaret while he's sort of getting the color drained out of him, like there's a I don't know what the word is. I'm not going to say hopeful. It doesn't feel hopeful, but it feels like
peaceful.
Peaceful.
Well, it feels like there's some relief too, right? I mean, there's definitely an exhale in this scene. So here we go.
He gets better after that.
That's such a strong scene. Really
one shot before where that starts is a great triptych sort of, but it's that's the one time when we pulled the wall, but our bad. We didn't.
Yeah, we should have done better.
Given us the head of it, you mean?
Sorry.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about with that? I mean, there's sort of I think Verita worked really well because the movie starts very kind of bleak. It's all grays and browns in the wardrobe, in the environments, and then you go to the Priory and we introduce blue. The prioress is always wearing blue. Everyone in the Priory wears blue. Spring comes, you get greens, it gets warmer, and then there's sort of a section towards the end where Robin is kind of slowly dying, and everything gets a little more desaturated again, but then it sort of like finds that weird middle ground of like it's that weird Verita quality of like it's kind of desaturated and in its own way, but then it also like you said, it sort of does skin tones in a certain way where it still has this kind of strange different kind of life to it, and it was this perfect middle ground.
The skin tones do a lot. And again, but it's also like how it handled. There's still like there's like a bleachiness to the highlights that I think I don't know. I could be using it wrong, but
What do you remember? What you rated it at?
I rated this at 400. So anytime I've shot it, I rated it at 400. So
yeah, and most of the filmmakers are using it at 250, 200.
now,
Yeah,
right. But I also I rated 400, but I also like monitor because again, this is I found that it's a little bit, it's not as the latitude is not like the same as vision. The fall off is much faster in the shadows. And so I like when I was it's actually quite hard going on a whole movie of vision and then like putting your brain into that, especially only having shot it with it. I mean, I did a couple of things with it, but like it's not something that is as second nature as vision is to me at this point. So I like went into this day and it was not something I even considered or thought about. And then I realized, and like my focus puller is like, oh, so we're putting on, at that point it wasn't even called Verita, it was
SO 056, Special Order 056.
That's what it was. And he's like, so we're putting that on, right? And I'm like, oh yeah. And like it just like hadn't clicked that I'm like, and all of a sudden now I like have to adjust my contrast ratios in ways that like I wasn't really emotionally prepared to be doing. And so like that whole day I was just like, the scene's so important. We're dealing with like very hyper intense performances. Michael's doing 11-minute takes.
It was like an 8 or 9 page scene that we shot in one day, and it's the whole and that's that whole chunk. It's like a 10-minute chunk of the film that we shoot on Verita, and it's the finale of the movie. And yeah, we shot them pretty much.
I mean, we would shoot a grand and then just next. Did
you watch those dailies?
No.
Why?
At that point, you're done. Like,
and where in your shooting schedule were you on this?
It's pretty close to the end.
Pretty close to the end. This is like last week.
I think this was the last. This was the last real scene we shot in the bed chamber.
They were stripping like this. I remember like or maybe in the bed chamber. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was the last bed. I think we might have gotten like a tiny pickup or something. But like
second unit might have done the bowl.
Yeah, but yeah, this was one of our last bed chamber scenes, which gets into that whole idea of like how do we like that was a set with a soft drop outside for the window that had this beautiful view of a panorama that we took in Northern Ireland.
That's
on the
not
coast.
the best scene. So.
Yeah, you can't really see it in that one, but
in that one though, we like I was kind of hoping, and again like to Verita, like the way that the whites feel, like like I wanted to let those windows go. Like normally when you're in that room, you kind of see the ocean, you see the world, you see the sky textures outside there, and in that one we're kind of choosing to let it go, and we're not really showing what's outside that window the same way. The initial ending shot that we had talked about all through prep was a shot where Margaret lets the arrow, she looses the arrow, and we actually just go out the window with the arrow, and we sort of just continue on floating into, like, effectively for as long as he would have allowed it, which would have been a long time if you let
10, 20 minutes.
And I think when we shot this, I think we kind of looked at each other after Pugh's performance, and it was just kind of like, I think that's...
Yeah, it was like, you got to end on the close-up. Which
but,
I put you guys through a lot trying to figure out that final shot, and then we were like, you know what, we're not going to do it.
But, I guess that, though, I kind of like that we actually never see what's out the window.
Yeah.
I think because, like, in our minds, the loosing of the arrow is sort of him releasing, out as well. So
I love the way the blue of her dress reads too. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, the colors are very different than what you get out of Vision. And how they talk to each other. It's a very special stuff. I mean, like, we chose to only do the last scene on it. I think at one point we had talked about doing all the daylight exteriors on it, and I realized that I think it probably would have been the wrong choice. If I'm honest, I think it's kind of...
I like that we saved it.
Yeah, it's like it's nice that it only exists in this one moment.
Well, and Tom Poole probably has the most experience with it, too.
He does,
I mean, he
without a
did all
doubt.
of Euphoria and really worked closely with Marcel Rev on that workflow. So, I mean, he knows how to play with it really well.
He does. It's funny. This is the scene that we spent the most time grading by far. And Tom, who I love dearly, we finished... I think we spent a couple of hours on it one day, and I just wasn't there yet. I was like... Yeah, he's like, this is so beautiful. I'm like, I think we got to come back tomorrow. He's like, why? And I'm like, no, like, I don't know. I just don't feel like it's there. Like,
did you make changes the next day?
We did. It's definitely the scene that we spent the longest grading for because it's important, you know, and
it pays off. I mean, it's just so pretty.
And that balance that we're talking about between something that's not too like kitschy, hopeful, but like also not feeling too dark or full of grief. Like it's a weird line to try to find. And so we kind of, you know, Tom, I think, really brought that to life.
And Jodie's performance in this movie is just, she's spectacular.
She's pretty good.
Everyone, there's not an inauthentic moment in this film. Like it is perfect in that way. But I was curious about the Margaret. She looks familiar. I feel like I've seen her somewhere.
She was in Hamnet. She had a
that's
she had a small role in Hamnet.
That's why she's familiar.
And I mean, this is definitely like the biggest thing that she's like her biggest role that she's done, and she was just incredible. Her name is Faith Delaney, and Nina Gold was
Two-take Faith.
We called her Two-Take Faith because literally she was 2 takes and done. Like, and she
Unreal.
was 11 years old. And just Nina Gold, our casting director, who's incredible, is great at finding kids, and we just auditioned her. There's a scene where Jodie and Hugh and Faith are eating soup, and that was like our auditioning scene because I needed to see if she could kind of like do a quiet performance with no speaking, where she's kind of acting across from an adult who's sort of, you know, playing with her and giving her something that she has to respond to. And like when she did that, and I saw her just kind of coming up with these moments, it was like this. It's got to be her, and she was just amazing. Like and you could talk to her like just a 30-year-old actor. Like you would just be like, "Hey, so I'm thinking like there's your character's kind of going through this," and she'd be like, "Interesting, okay, yeah," and it's like.
But you see it in her. I mean, there's incredible maturity. I mean, she has everything you want her to have in the role, but you can just tell she's impressive.
And also, I mean, Hugh and Jodie are the best, and Hugh is a very giving actor, and so, like, you know, there's another, 6 minutes to this scene, and there's this whole story he tells to Faith at the end, and a lot of it plays on just this close-up on Faith where she's reacting to it, and a lot of actors would maybe phone it in a little bit, but Hugh insisted on, like, dying in front of her every time and just giving it everything he had. So she was just like sobbing watching him do this, and like it was just, they created such like a beautiful little family that like
the crew applauded during one of the takes in that scene for Faith, not for Hugh, not for Jodie, but for Faith.
That's awesome. I assume Hugh was your first attached, and then Jodie.
Yeah, it was Hugh, then Jodie, and then it all sort of trickles from there. And I mean, I was very lucky with this cast. I mean, Bill Skarsgård was awesome as Little John. He doesn't even have that much makeup, but he just like disappears into the part. And we had Murray Bartlett as the leper, whose face is covered with gauze the entire time, and so you don't even ever really see him. But he was just amazing. I mean, Noah Jupe, like we just had we had an amazing cast. Everyone was like so into it, and it's a weird movie. Like it really gets very like meditative and philosophical, and like they were just all kind of ready to kind of get into this weird quiet space, and it was cool.
So now that you've done a small movie like Pig, and you've done the larger studio movie, and then you've done this kind of, generous indie budget, we'll call it, what is kind of your favorite of the three? Like, is there a space that you feel like you get to be?
This was my favorite. This was my favorite experience making a movie, and I really loved it. It was like you have the budget to have some of the toys and do some crazy things that we never could have imagined doing on Pig, but you don't have
a little bit of autonomy.
Yeah, you still have the autonomy of not, you're not like obeying a whole series of studio execs who each have different intentions.
Franchise that you have.
Yeah, this was like a lovely budget to work at, but I also I think for me it's just whatever a budget is like appropriate for the movie you're making. Like we knew we were making kind of a mature, dark Robin Hood movie, so we didn't want to make it for $80 million because we're not trying to make an action movie. We're trying to make something kind of left of center and somber, and so I think it's just about doing it. Like early on, there were conversations with sure, we could bring this to Warner Brothers and get another $50 million, and they'll want us to add an action scene here and there and turn it into something that it's not. So it was like, no, let's try it. I mean, at the end of the day, the actual production budget on this was $13 million, I think, besides above the line stuff, and and it was okay, if we can make it for that, then we can make something weird and unusual, and then A24 can release it in the summer and sell it as an action movie. Sorry, it didn't work.
Well, we can open up to the audience and take a couple questions. If anybody's got one.
First of all, love the movie, obsessed with it. The ending had me sobbing my eyes out, so
Perfect.
my heart. One thing I admire about your films is how much emotional weight comes from what isn't said. When you're writing, how do you decide what deserves dialogue versus what should simply exist in silence?
That's a great question. I mean, some of that continues into the edit process. Like, that's something I learned on Pig. Like, weirdly, the script for this movie was, I think, 94 pages. The script for Pig, I think, was like 83 pages or something. Like, it was already a pretty sparse script. And then in the edit, we cut out probably like a third of the dialogue. And so some of it's that I actually think, like, I love being sparse, but I also, it's okay to overwrite a little bit, and because I think that gives the actors something to work with, and they'll find ways to bring those things into the scene, and then you'll be like, oh, I actually don't need these lines anymore, and I can just chop that stuff out. So, like, I think, like, I mean, as far as, like, where I decide to be silent and where I decide to use dialogue, it all just comes down to, like, character. Like, I always start with character. I always start with, what is this world through the eyes of this character, and what is the sort of feeling of this, like, what is the soul of this character that I'm trying to lens this movie through, in like, not lens literally, but like, and so the dialogue just kind of comes from there, and then, I don't know, you just kind of figure it out as you, I don't know.
The
I don't
score
have,
was
there's no rule to
incredible
it.
too. I feel like the music
Yeah,
really
Jim did an
brought a lot of
amazing
emotion
job.
into like so many different scenes.
Jim was amazing. I mean, the fact that
was the best
he,
hire of the movie.
yeah, and he had, early
Like you,
on,
Pat.
yeah, early on, we like, I sort of knew that it would be easier. I was more interested in finding someone who had the right sound for the movie, and then sort of like teaching them how to compose a movie, rather than find a composer and then try and like adjust their sound to be the sound of the movie. And like, when we heard Jim's music, it was like, this is the soul of the movie. Now we like paired him with this guy named Tony Lewis, who's this incredible music editor who works with like Ridley Scott. And it was like, okay, how do we support him so that he can score a movie? And he also just happened to have like a knack for it. Like, it's very different writing like an album and doing a score. And he just had sort of a natural knack for it, but also like, it was just that fun thing of like, okay, he has the soul that we need. Now we just go back and forth and try his pieces in different places and sort of figure out the vibe as we go. And I had a great experience working with him.
Does he want to continue to compose?
I think he had a great time on it, and we were like mixing this stuff with him in the editor.
We also shot him as a peasant walking a donkey who gets beat to death.
He's
in the film.
You know when Little John's beating that guy to death to steal bread? That's Jim's character, but we cut the scene where he's walking and singing.
It's just a single one shot. It's like 4.5 minutes long and already 2 hours.
The whole there's like
and he's just singing, walking a donkey through the.
It'll be in the deleted scenes. The sung
Director's
song
cut.
is still in there, but we just took out the sort of diegetic thing. But he said, he was like, wow, this was amazing. Like, making like scores can be so collaborative and fun. And Tony was like, it's not usually like this, man. Like, he's this like grizzled old music editor who's like, get out now while you still have your soul. But he had a great time, and he was
I
lovely.
can't imagine he's not going to get requests after
hope
this
so.
film. So, any other questions?
It looks amazing, by the way. I think the color and the tone follows the story and the storyline. So I think emotion is really visually seen. My question, Pat, would be, how did you approach testing this film stock? Because you have a lot of experience with vision, you have experience with that, and now that this one came out, has your experience changed the way that you test stock? How did you get, if you can walk us through that process of getting new ratios and things like that?
Well, when I was testing this stock, it was harder to get. If I'm honest, I called Marcel, and he talked to me about his experience on Euphoria with it. And then I showed up to a music video set and shot it with 0 testing. And I thought that was my test. And then I sent it to him, and I was like, I think we should do the last scene of the movie on this thing, that check it out, look how it feels and looks. So I wish I had a better answer for you, but sometimes you just got to do something.
Well, and when Marcel was shooting with it, we didn't even have our sensitometry curves done. We hadn't published an TI document for it. And so Marcel was definitively like the resident expert. So anybody who was testing it out, I'm like, call Marcel. I don't know. So because we were still really trying to figure
you would
it
ask
out.
them and be like, well, what do I rate it at? They're like, we're not really saying. You're like, okay.
Yeah, because I mean, it really has to be tested until we've commercialized it and we have all of the technical information to partner with it. But that was Marcel had shot 1 million feet, so.
And I shot when I did test it on that video. It was I shot it at 400, and that was before you guys had it had been updated to. Or well, I don't know. I don't know why I ended up rating it at 400. I just did.
Worked out.
Yeah,
That's good.
Well, and I think part of the reason we ended up deciding to bring it to market at 200 was also to make sure people understand it does need light, but also we didn't want to confuse it with our 250 daylight product because it is very different. It performs very differently, obviously. So we would kind of talk to everybody who had shot it, during various customer testing that we did.
It does love light, though.
Yeah,
it
needs.
It excels with like bright. If I want to do something like with brightness or even bright desert daylight, I would love to do something with that stuff like that. It's just so when it has that, Whereas if you're kind of doing something much more low con, I think maybe vision is maybe a more appropriate. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
Hi. One of the things I really loved about this film is just how nuanced we're really able to see each character. It's like they feel so human, and there's not really judgment cast on it. And I was wondering if you guys could talk a little bit more about how you approach perspective when you guys are shooting this.
Yeah, I mean,
I think when we shot, again, Michael's talked about, how we kind of really dig in and shot list each scene, and I don't really think saying shot list really is adequate for the amount of discussion that occurs during these. I mean, it takes
the amount of martinis.
Yeah, but oftentimes perspective is a huge part of that discussion. Whose scene is it, and what are we trying to say, or if we're splitting the scene between the two of them, when does it switch perspective? All of that is really talked about in how we design the shot structure of the scenes. So I'm glad it seems to work. But it's definitely something that we pay a lot of attention to, and how we lens certain people. You might find that in some scenes we lens somebody slightly closer or slightly further based on who is maybe in control or whatever is happening in that moment and what it calls for. But yeah, it's very considered.
That was the best answer. Yeah, I got nothing else.
Right here.
Hi. Loved everything I saw. This might be super hyper specific, but you said that scene with the Verita was your hardest to grade. I'm really curious, why and where did it start? And it kind of ends in a neutral, beautiful territories.
I don't want to get it twisted and make it. It wasn't hard, technically.
Yeah,
I think,
yeah. More it was, your taste.
It was emotionally, it was difficult for me. I don't know why. I think it was because the scene was so sensitive, and we were trying to straddle this line. I wish we could put the painting of Wyeth up here, because it kind of would explain it.
I think it's in our filmmaker story. We might be able to do that. Let's just see.
That would be cool. Yeah. But yeah, I think it was because we were trying to walk this line of something that I wasn't even sure I knew if it was there. I did my best to light it a certain way and whatever, but sometimes, and it's funny, it's you watch this film, I would say 80% of the film feels, and this is not a slight or anything, but very close to the dailies, or they're better, and then we pushed them further, but they're very close in terms of intention. I think this scene by nature, I think came in because of the stock too, that the stock is a warmer stock, and it comes in a lot warmer. So I wanted to bring out certain tones of that, but also lose certain tones. I wanted to lose yellow out of it, but allow for redness and magenta and peach to come through. And it was kind of me and Tom, and I don't know if you were in the room that day when I was when Tom was getting it was beautiful what he was doing, and we were really finding something, but it was a quest to find some kind of tone that I just didn't. it's rare that I don't really know exactly what I want out of something, and this was a bit, I wanted to be able to discover it a little bit more, especially with how much capability the stock has. Maybe that's a best way to say it.
Yeah,
Which he's being modest, but like he really, I mean, I feel like everyone assumes that like Pat's always shooting with natural light because he has such like a naturalistic look that's so beautiful. But like he's so painterly with his light and so specific. Like he's shooting what he wants it to look like. And yeah, there's always stuff to do in color, but like he's not like planning to like drastically change the image in color in any big way. Like he's very specific about the image he's capturing. So that's actually very unusual for him to discover it at that phase. But it was kind of, I don't know, it kind of worked out.
Again, it was such like an important scene. Didn't want to miss out on an opportunity. Did we answer? Yes, we answered that.
Can I ask one more?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. And then the approach to Little John's Stolen Home. You do that in like a one or is it on tracks? But who came up with was that always conceived as a oneer, and was it always conceived to have the blocking as such where he leaves frame, comes back into frame, and then the kill happens and things like? How did you guys construct that moment?
It was always conceived of as a oneer. Even in the script, it was pretty specific about
the script doesn't say oneer, but it's written very obviously as like in one long arduous movement or some all well written.
And some of the, I think we came up in shot listing with him like, because I think in the script you actually go into the little hut with him when he kills the guy, and we were like, maybe it'd be kind of fun if, I think that was your idea, just be like, what if you just like went in there and you're just sort of like lost in the darkness there, and you like hear these noises, and then the guy comes at, like, I think that was something we found in the shot listing, and then actually like we shot it as a full oneer all the way up to the point where Little John hits the guy in the head. But then Pat was like, maybe we should just get a shot of Hugh approaching to see his like intensity. And we ended up doing that, and the oneer worked, but we were kind of like, it is kind of nice to like get that moment of Hugh building up for this one moment. So it was worth it.
Also, a lot of when we deal with anything with like physical action, it's typically like we show up to the location and Michael acts it out and I shoot it.
That's how I broke my shoulder.
He broke his shoulder on Quiet Place doing this exact thing. I have it on video. They needed it for insurance.
Yeah,
actually.
Paramount made him send the video. Should I tell this story?
It's fine. It's over now.
Yeah, Paramount made him send.
The shoulder's fine, right?
Yeah, sort of. Paramount made him send the video for insurance purposes, but he took the audio out because in the background you hear him being like, "Get up, man! What are you doing? What are you doing?"
Oh, that's so funny.
But yeah, so like that, this oneer exists on my phone as Michael creeping around playing Robin and the guy who's been cut, and like so.
Again, I think we need a BTS expansion. I love it. Well, I'm just going to speak into the world that I hope this movie is back in theaters so that we can all enjoy it on the big screen. I just think it's a really beautiful film, and congratulate you both on it. And so glad that you got to shoot film so that you could come here and talk about it today. So
we are too. It was an amazing experience. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And see it whenever you can, however you can.
Thanks,